Lagos, Nigeria is the largest city in Africa and is projected to be the largest city in the world in 2100. It could even cross the 100 million residents mark sometime thereafter. That's like 2 Tokyos put together. It's estimated that 3,000 people move to Lagos every day. Lagos becoming the largest city in the world will also signal a massive change in global cities. In 1900, London and New York were the world's largest cities. Today, Tokyo, Delhi, and Shanghai are the largest, and most can be found in Asia. By 2100, projections have Lagos, Kinshasa, Dar es Salaam, and Luanda at or near the top of the list of the most populous urban regions. The African urban century could be coming next, where some of the largest and most influential cities will not be in the US, UK, Japan, or China, but instead in Nigeria, Angola, and Tanzania. But 100 million people is completely next level. The Pearl River Delta region might be the only thing we have close to that, with 85 million people in Hong Kong, Macau, Guangdong, and surrounding cities. But in that case, you have 3 major cities growing together. Having 100 million people in one city makes you ask questions like, what makes Lagos so special that 100 million people would want to live there? And can Lagos even handle 100 million people? Let's answer those questions after the bike bell. Why are all of these people moving to Lagos? Well, the simple answer is that they're looking for opportunities they can't find elsewhere. And elsewhere is usually the countryside. Cities, and not just Lagos, are kind of like factories that produce wealth, culture, and opportunity on an enormous scale. Cities may well be mankind's greatest invention, as they can pull entire nations out of poverty. This happens because humans just become more productive when they live in cities, and they can become up to 50% more productive. A lot of that bonus comes from proximity. Having so many people close together leads to more commerce, more ideas, and more innovation. And in most cases, all of that productivity results in higher wages for urban dwellers than for nearby rural dwellers. And those wages are high enough to offset the higher cost of living. In Africa, wages in cities are around double what they are in rural areas, and around 30% more work hours are available per person on average in cities than in smaller towns. In nearby Ghana, a 2018 survey found that 60% of families in rural areas were receiving money sent to them from relatives living in cities. This is a direct demonstration of how much extra wealth cities produce. We've seen this dynamic play out in countries like China, where rural to urban migration contributed to rapid growth in household standard of living. In 1950, only 13% of Chinese people lived in cities, and today it's over half. This was no accident, as Chinese state policy encouraged the rapid industrialization of its cities starting in the late 1940s, and encouraged migration to fill factories. They were using cities to make its people and nation more productive and wealthy. Okay, so we know why people move to cities, but why is Lagos going to be the first city to cross 100 million? Well, we have to look at rural to urban migration. Nigeria is the most populous country in Africa, with 223 million people. That's 15% of the entire continent's population, and almost 100 million more than Ethiopia, number 2 on the list. Why is this important? Well, when we think of migration, we often think of immigration. That's moving from one country to another. Here in the United States, the images of European immigrants coming by the boatfuls, passing by the Statue of Liberty, and landing on Ellis Island is a part of our national story. But that's a difficult, risky process. Most migration happens from within a country, from a rural area to an urban area. Nigeria is the largest country by population and has the greatest number of rural dwellers to move into a big city like Lagos. But China and India have over 1 billion people. Aren't they more likely to have a city with over 100 million people just based on their total population? But both of these countries are much larger in land area than Nigeria. China has 10 times the land area of Nigeria, in fact. This means that China has many more suitable locations for massive cities, places like river deltas that are strategically important for trade. Places like Hong Kong and Shanghai. All of China's urbanization is spread out. Today, China is home to 25 of the 100 most populous cities in the world. India is the same way. There are many massive cities in that country. Nigeria really only has Lagos. There are cities over 1 million people in the country, but Lagos dominates the country in a way that is different from any city in China and India. It's the most likely place for a rural migrant to go looking for opportunity. Now, you might think at some point Lagos will just absorb all the migrants in Nigeria and eventually stabilize its population. That's what's happened in a lot of Western cities. People still move from rural areas to those cities, but the rate is nothing compared to when the first wave of urbanization happened. The thing is, Nigeria is still growing, and fast. If you look at the world leaders in fertility rate, which is the number of births per woman, Nigeria is in the top 10, and it is the largest country by population in the top 10. That's a lot of people having a lot of babies. Nigeria's 5.1 births per woman is far higher than Chinese 1.2, which is reflective of their previous one-child policy. Nigeria's fertility rate is even 2.5 times that of India. As Nigeria's population continues to grow, it generates wave after wave of migrants with no other obvious place to go but Lagos. This fertility rate mechanism is going to generate many other massive cities in Africa too. One of the more impressive projections is for Niamey, the capital of nearby Niger. As of 2022, it had a population of around 1.3 million. It's the biggest city in Niger, but is not even close to being one of the largest cities in Africa. But Niger is #1 on the fertility rate chart, and some demographers project Niamey will be one of the 10 largest cities in the world in 2100 with a population of 56.1 million residents. Again, that dwarfs Tokyo, and I'm guessing you probably haven't even heard of that city. Migration isn't the only way cities grow. We just talk about it a lot because it's one of the largest ways cities grow. But some cities wouldn't be growing if it wasn't for migration. They'd be shrinking otherwise. This is not the case in Lagos. A majority of residents are under the age of 30, which is generally a common time for people to have babies. Lagos will be growing rapidly even without migration, basically. So why is Lagos poised to be the first city of 100 million people? Well, its country is growing so fast that in 30 years, its population will likely double to over 400 million. And rapid urbanization directed at just one city means that Lagos's growth will be supercharged in the future. So what kind of city will those 100 million residents be living in? Will it be any good? Well, I hope so, but the trajectory is not great. And that's not just American me saying this, but Nigerian researchers and NGOs that I've cited in this video all tend to agree. Perhaps the greatest challenge facing Lagos is its slums. An estimated 2/3 of all of its residents live in informal settlements. Homes and buildings are often built by the residents themselves or built without any oversight around structural integrity. Utilities are not always well distributed, meaning that electricity, water, and sewer are luxuries. Homes are often overcrowded, with families jammed into small spaces. Floods are a common occurrence, and the unsanitary water spreads disease. Formalizing and upgrading slums is a very difficult task. Families don't have a title to the land they're on, and in many cases it's not actually clear who owned the land in the first place. But even if the government could give land to slum dwellers, it would almost certainly have to evict families due to overcrowding. Providing water pipes, sewer pipes, power lines, and garbage service is expensive as well, and slum dwellers don't make enough for their taxes to pay for these upgrades. Money would have to come from somewhere else, and elite Nigerians have not prioritized slum upgrading. Slum upgrading in any city is going to be a challenge, and especially in Lagos where the scale is so much larger, that challenge will just be larger. Now, I could do a whole video on slum upgrading, so I'm going to stop talking about it right now. Nigerian authorities would understandably prefer the urban area stay below 100 million to reduce all of the challenges I just described. In their mind, it's easier to avoid slums than try to formalize them later. To their credit, they've been actively trying to reduce migration to Lagos. The first major act was moving the capital of Nigeria from Lagos to a newly built one called Abuja, near the geographic center of the country. There were multiple reasons for moving the capital, which I discussed in a previous video, but slowing Lagos's growth was a priority. It's worked, as Abuja is now the second largest urban area in the country. That's millions of people who might have settled in Lagos instead. Nigeria is trying to spread out the economic benefits cities create to spread out those migrants. For example, now that Lagos's Lekki Deep Seaport project has been completed, the Nigerian Port Authority wants to build 4 more deep seaports to drive trade and generate wealth. 3 of those seaports will be far from Lagos, with the aim of generating urbanization in another part of the country. But these efforts and others may only delay Lagos's inevitable march towards 100 million in the next 100 years. But if Lagos can start to solve its slum problem and start building a strong middle class, it could be the next great world metropolis. Already, Lagos is beginning to show the world its unique culture and perspective. Lagos Fashion Week is growing in size and influence. Nollywood, the Nigerian cinema industry centered in Lagos, produces 2,500 films each year, only topped by Bollywood in India. You simply can't put so many young, ambitious people in one place without generating world-changing culture. Lagos is the likely choice for the world's largest city in 2100, and in the intervening years, it'll be fascinating to watch how the city grows into that role. If you're the kind of person who loves learning about fascinating cities from all over the world, just like Lagos, you'll really love the videos I made about Shanghai and its metro system, Paris and its boulevards, Venice and its canals, Cairo and its amazing history, Canberra and its unique urban plan, and New York and its Central Park. Those are the videos in my Great City series. They're longer than a typical video and had a higher budget, so they look great too. You can check them out over on Nebula. Nebula is a creator-owned video service that I'm incredibly proud to be a part of. You can watch all of my YouTube videos there and all of my bonus content, which includes those Great City videos, planning ancient Rome, and shorter extra videos. Our plan is to make Nebula a place where you can find more content and a better experience than you find here. Another way we're doing that is through Nebula first. I post videos to Nebula before I post them on YouTube. In fact, that means that anytime you see me post a video on YouTube, I've already posted my next video on Nebula. You can actually go watch that video right now. It's on mass transit. I looked at the difference between elevated lines and underground lines, and I took the opportunity to explore the Chicago L at the same time. I think you're really gonna love that video. Other creators are doing the same thing, meaning that you can watch videos from Johnny Harris, Legal Eagle, Jetlag, and more earlier than you find them on YouTube. Oh, and I have to talk about Jetlag for a second. Jetlag is one of my favorite Nebula original series, which is sort of like a travel game show involving lots of trains and funny challenges. If you like my channel, I can pretty much guarantee that you'll get addicted to that series. Now, Nebula is normally priced at a completely reasonable $50 per year, but if you use my code CityBeautiful when you sign up, you get $20 off that annual plan. That brings it down to $250 a month, which is really the best deal in streaming for what you get.